In spite of popular opinion that entrepreneurship is a solo sport, it's very much a team activity. As entrepreneurs, there's time spent in talking with co-founders or talking with prospective partners or employees. There's time spent in dialoguing with customers. There's time spent in talking to press or investors. In all of these elements, having strong interpersonal skills are certainly an asset for entrepreneurs that have them. While some people might have them in what they believe to be naturally, they've probably been learned and developed over time. And all of us can likely stand to improve our interpersonal skills as well. So we'll talk about some of these, some of the benefits and ways to do that. And we're going to talk about it in the context of entrepreneurial behaviors and the benefits as well as some measurement of that. And this is within our third piece of entrepreneurial behaviors in the opportunity analysis canvas. So a couple of things that can help us answer the question of our interpersonal skills are: to what extent do we seek approval or information? Do we try and guess how we should act? Do we isolate ourselves? Do we downplay our accomplishments? Do we have difficulty following a project through? Are we easily frightened or stressed? Do we feel that others take advantage of us? Do we take relationships seriously and take ourselves seriously? Do we have problems developing intimate relationships? Do we ever feel guilty or feel responsible or act impulsively or have difficulty expressing our feelings? All of these are the types of things that we're talking about when we're examining interpersonal skills. We find too that there's a great divide in the present workplace, particularly in looking at millennials. When we look at how millennials describe themselves, we see that many feel they are people savvy. They have lots of Facebook friends, so of course they're people savvy. That they're very tech savvy, that they're very loyal to their employers. That while they like to have fun, 86% believe they're very hardworking. When we look at how HR professionals, human resource professionals, describe millennials, we see an entirely different story. We see the people savviness is nowhere near 65%, and that they are extremely tech savvy, but the loyalty is near zero. And that while they're hardworking at 11%, they're fun-loving at 39%. A very different perspective. So without seeing all of the data and studying the survey, I can't speak to the accuracy of it, but I can say that this is a good representation that how we see ourselves may not be how others see us. And that's not only true when we're looking at interpersonal skills, it's true in many of the behaviors that we'll be discussing. So when we define interpersonal skills, we're talking about the skills related to relationships and communication between people. We're talking about building relationships with new people as part of that, as well as renewing, maintaining, and enhancing our existing relationships. When we look at what are examples of interpersonal skills, well, it's communication, it's assertiveness, it's conflict resolution, it's anger management. And while there are others, these are some of the key elements. To look at each of these, I want to talk a few minutes about some ideas and some opportunities for improvement. With communication skills, listening, very important. Remembering that we have a bit of a filter, that our prior assumptions and judgments and beliefs are going to guide, for better or worse, what we hear. And that we want to respond and not react. We want to think about our responses, have some self-filter and self-monitoring that's in place, and most importantly, we want to focus on understanding what's being said and clarify to make sure we understand what's being said or expressed. to improve our assertiveness, we want to be specific and ask for what we want. We want to be direct. We want to deliver the message for whom the person it's intended. And we want to own that message and acknowledge the frame of reference. And in that way, not be fearful of communicating what our needs and wants are. From a conflict resolution standpoint, we want to focus on the problem, the root problem, and not the individual. We want to think about, again, being direct and specific while being positive and acknowledging and validating other parties and their concerns. We also want to summarize new understandings and develop alternative solutions, and ideally discuss next steps and follow-up. Now, the alternative solutions may not be an ideal solution, and it may not even be a collaborative solution, but we do want to be aware of what the candidates are before we choose which path we may want to go. From an anger management perspective, we want to be aware of what we're feeling and notice the signs that it may be building. We want to understand what's really bothering me and not displacing anger or cause. We may need to de-escalate and take a break and reconvene in an hour, or talk tomorrow, or take some time off. We want to examine our options and visualize how we may respond. In that measure, we want to play chess but not checkers. We want to think multiple steps ahead. What may I do? What will be the response of them? What will I do next? How will they respond? What will I do next? And think through that. And we want to, again, be assertive and address root causes and develop activities that help us cope with anger. Now, there are many benefits to these interpersonal skills. One, it certainly contributes to the quantity and the quality of networks and relationships and friendships that we can form. It also influences our ability for the better of accessing entrepreneurial opportunities. And we'll talk about this when we talk about social capital. But if you are known and liked and known widely, your awareness of opportunities and your ability to act on them is dramatically higher. And building and maintaining relationships is the key. Knowing key stakeholders opens doors. It opens access to information and resources. It gives you the opportunity to facilitate new relationships. And you may be able to bypass some of the normal communication streams. If you have friends in different organizations that you can contact, you don't need to call the front desk. You don't need to send an email to the generic number, or you don't need to randomly cold call people. You can use some of the relationships you already have in place to make those introductions and to bridge those paths and to get those referrals. Our interpersonal skills inventory is going to help in assessing that. And as we pointed out earlier, we may have one view of how we are. We may be accurate. We probably aren't. And through the influence of these types of tools, as well as input from others, we get a truer sense of ourselves, not only for interpersonal skills, but in a variety of other areas. This is also a good time to point out Dale Carnegie, who over 70 years ago published this book that addressed some pretty fundamental things that are still valuable today. What are some tools and techniques to become a friendlier person? What are some ways to win people to your way of thinking or influence? What are ways to be a leader? So when we look at this brief book summary, it gives us a reminder of things we know and some things to do that we may not have thought of before or may not have considered. So I encourage you to take a moment, review the list, and consider the book as well. So in summary, what we see is that others' perceptions of us are a truer measure of our interpersonal skills and a truer measure of many of our entrepreneurial behaviors. That within interpersonal skills, we want to think about communication, assertiveness, conflict resolution, and anger management. We also want to focus on building and maintaining relationships. Maintaining, I would certainly emphasize the most. It's much easier to keep a relationship, to keep in touch with a friend or a contact, than to make a new one. And in this climate, with the technology tools that are in place, LinkedIn, Facebook, among others, it's very easy to do so. And so I encourage you to use those types of tools to stay connected to your networks, and also to think about how you can connect to new networks.